Welcome. We'll get started shortly. Before we begin, here's how to earn continuing professional education credit for attending this session. There are no polling questions or attendance checks. Instead, you will demonstrate your knowledge by taking a brief multiple-choice quiz using the Earmark app. Visit earmark.app in your web browser. You can also download the mobile app by scanning the QR code on the screen. Log in, or if you're new, create your free account. Be sure to use a valid email address because that's where we'll send your course completion certificates. From the home screen, scroll down to find the course. You can also tap the magnifying glass icon to search for the course. Tap on the course artwork, then the Enroll button. On the Course tab, you'll find the recording and quiz questions. Complete the quiz to earn your CPE certificate. It takes us a few days to create the course on the app, so if you are attending this session live, please wait a few days. We'll email you a link to the course when it is ready. If you have questions or need help, email us at support@earmarkcpe.com. And now, on to the event.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today or watching this on demand. I'm Zach from Earmark, and this is Tax Season Mastery, Strategies for Accounting Firms. And I'm going to hand it off to your instructors for today. So please, guys, take it away.
Cool. Hey, everybody. I was vibing out to that intro music. I really like that. We can keep that going at the end. But welcome to today's roundtable. I'm David Wiesneck, expert in residence here at RAMP, and I'm thrilled to have you all here with us and to Earmark today. Before we dive in, just a few housekeeping items. If you have any issues with the system, try using the Chrome browser. It seems to perform the best. Everybody who's listening in here that's live is muted, off camera for the session. So sit back, relax, enjoy the discussion. Use the chat to interact with us and respond to today's topics. We'd love to see an active chat. And if you have any questions for myself, for our guests, submit them through the Q&A feature or the chat. We'll do our best to address them during the session, and we'll dedicate some time at the end for Q&A. And just remember, today's session will be recorded, will be shared via Earmark with CPE credits that we will send, our CPE instructions, which we'll send afterwards. All right. Well, I see the chat going already, so let's get started. We all know that tax season is in full swing, right? We truly appreciate you guys for taking your time to join us today. At RAMP, we see firsthand the challenges that accounting firms face, balancing efficiency, accuracy, and client service under tight deadlines. That's why we're excited to bring together today's expert panel, speakers who have all been in your shoes and have developed strategies to make tax season more manageable and productive. So I want to introduce our guests who are leaders in RAMP's Accounting Partner Program. We have John Geeson, CPA, Chief Financial Officer at Account Talent. Hey, John. We have Larry Bernstein, also CPA, CEO at Procer.
Everybody.
And Matthew Young, COO at Bay Business Group. Hey, Matthew.
Everybody.
Awesome. I see the chat going. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. All right. So we're deep into tax season. And I would assume that this one is just as much of a doozy as any of years past. But just to level set, in your perspectives, what are some of the common challenges that firms generally face during tax season? And how does your firm address them? Larry, why don't you start us off?
So I think, at this point at tax season, we're really at the beginning. And one of the biggest challenges is just collecting all the information from clients, whether that's trial balances and general ledgers for business clients or W-2s and 1099s and all the other documents that come along from individual tax clients. And so, how do you address these things? I think, early in our career, we would take an email and we would create a list and we'd send it, and then they'd send back a few. And then you'd take that same list and take off those 2 or 3 things that came in, and you'd resend the list again a few days later, or maybe a couple of weeks later, and do this process over and over and over again. I call this the chase, and the chase is a really difficult and frustrating part of being a tax professional. And so there's a lot of technology tools out there now that can help with this chase, not only putting together the information, the open items list, if you will, but also to then help do automatic follow-ups and allow clients to easily add the documents that are missing. And so, at our firm, we use a practice management tool called Carbon, which is not specifically for tax, but it helps with this chase throughout any type of accounting work. But there's also some newer tools from SafeSend and some other groups that will help with the chase and help with the uploading of documents. So I think really, if you can master that front end and help bring in the documents, you've already solved a really big challenge.
Yeah, and that's Carbon with a K, correct?
Carbon with a K, that's right.
Okay. Matthew, what about you? What are some challenges that you see, recurring, new challenges, and how is your firm solving for those?
Yeah, so a big challenge for us was really, we had a lot of really seasoned, knowledgeable, expert tax preparers that were doing too much data entry. And when you think about like where we want a seasoned tax professional spending their time, it's not inputting information into the tax software, right? It's really the tax analysis part of the tax preparation process and not necessarily getting information to our software. And so that has been something that we've been working on a lot over the past 2 years, is really to push down that tax prep or data input piece of the process to less seasoned professionals and really make sure that we're utilizing our tax pros' time on the correct information. And so it's been a big change within our firm that people are still not used to, and it's still kind of, there's some friction there, but that's one of the big ones. And then as you push down the work to the people that are more appropriate to do that work, it's then making sure that they're elevating their questions, right? So what we don't want is people spinning their wheels, people trying to figure something out that maybe is a really quick answer. And so, how do we manage making sure that they're spending their time efficiently, while also making sure that they're not knocking on a tax pro's door every 5 minutes because they've run into an issue in the tax software. So, managing that balance or towing the line of when they are trying to figure something out versus when they need to go ask a question is delicate, and making sure that people understand that has been a big challenge.
Yeah, super relevant. John, what about for you and your firm?
Yeah, I think Larry and Matthew did a great job. I mean, I think it really comes down to info requests and staff burnout. So what are you doing about it? And so I love Larry's comment on, trying to pull data other than the old school email way. One of the ways we've accomplished that is really just gaining access to all of our client systems. It takes a little bit of work, but we do that up front before busy season. And so when we have access to those systems, we can just pull the data and we keep the client out of it. And we also look at that as good customer service. The client doesn't want to be involved. The client doesn't want to be pulled a bunch of questions. To the extent that we can do the majority of that work without getting them involved and then sending them a draft, they really appreciate that approach. And then from a staff burnout standpoint, it also solves that issue as well, because now the staff isn't spending, 3 or 4 emails trying to get the same exact data from the same exact client. And the client doesn't want those emails either. So it's just kind of a round robin. And I love what Matthew said about staffing and finding the right person to do those roles. We're all in tune to CPAs handling taxes. That's just kind of the whole world is in tune to that, but it doesn't have to be that way. Maybe it's a CPA that's reviewing it, but certainly the more you can do, the more folks you can get involved and handle some of those maybe manual, data entry type things. The more you can do that, the better the firm is going to operate. And the key piece to that, what we've found out is, we're doing research and development tax studies. We're doing Delaware franchise filings for a lot of our C corporations. Well, why is the CPA handling some of those items? Some of those items could actually be handled outside of the CPA. So you handle that, create happy staff. You create happy staff, tends to lead to happy clients.
Yeah. And you touched upon there, you talked about preparation, right? Spending time outside of tax season, preparing you for tax season for that time of the year. You talked about one strategy, right? Getting access to all those systems. And actually there's a question in the chat. So I'd love for you to answer this one, which is, how do you gain access to all of your client systems to be able to prepare for that? And after that, kind of what other strategies are you doing outside of tax season, right, in the fall, early in the year, to prepare for tax season?
Yeah, so I would just say our onboarding survey, our onboarding email gives folks the ability to invite us into their systems. So, we have the laundry list of the major systems that most clients are using. And we're fortunate because we work with a lot of startups. So a lot of startups use very similar software versus some of the larger clients that maybe Matthew and Larry are working with. Their ERP systems could be completely different. And so right on the onboarding, we say, invite us in. This is exactly how you invite us in. Here are the instructions. It will make your life easier. So that's essentially the first piece. And that's payroll, that's general ledger, that's cap table, that's potentially banking if it's necessary. Sometimes it isn't, as long as we have access to the ERP and the bookkeeping system. So that's typically where we start. And then, from a standpoint of outside of tax season, we might have already done the client's taxes at one point. What did we run into? We have the same CPA managing the process year in, year out. What are the issues we ran into? Let's document them. Let's not worry about it in the middle of busy season. And then let's share thoughts with the rest of the CPAs. What can we do to address those? And then I don't know if you call it a 1-day sprint, a half-day sprint, but we kind of get all of that together and we figure out what is it that burdened us during busy season. Let's go address it.
I like that. Larry, what about you? Outside of busy season, how are you prepping the team in the kind of the calmer times of the year to prepare for the busy season?
Yeah, so I think John got it right with getting access to client systems, and I think there are kind of two different things to think about. So I'm going to talk about just one of them. One would be how to prep the tax team, but let's put that aside for a minute. A big part of our business is becoming the accounting department for clients. This is CAS work, and this is why we're ramp partners, because we're doing the fulfilling the accounting department function for a large percentage of our clients. And because of that, same like John said, we have access to client systems. We set up their accounting system, we set up their ramp instance, we get access, read-only access to their bank accounts, we set up their payroll systems, we do all these things. The tax team is not the one who's doing this, it's the accounting team. But because they're doing this for businesses throughout the year, we're talking to those clients throughout the year. We know what has happened, and we're having conversations about what is going to happen and what the client is planning to do, which then allows for tax planning for what did happen and what they might do. The best tax planning can happen before those events occur, so we have the opportunity to influence them. And then because of that, when we get actually to tax season, which is starting now, this is really kind of more of a byproduct of all the planning that's already happened. And that's kind of the best preparation, removing surprises and whatnot.
Yeah, I like that. And because you have all the context from the accounting work, it's very easy to share that internally with the tax team as they do the returns. It makes a much smoother tax season for those clients. Matthew, anything differently? Anything to add on what the other said?
No, I mean, we're in a very similar position to what Larry said, right? So we do, for almost all of the returns that we do, that we're doing the books as well. So we're the outsourced accounting team. And so making sure that the books are as clean as they can be, we do a really hard close at the end of December. So that way the tax team, which is usually the same team as the accounting team, isn't having to do any other adjustments or entries to make sure to get those financials into the software is important. And so for clients where we do have trouble with that, right, we kind of have a rehash of tax season after the fact, and we make sure that next year those clients aren't going to be an issue. Or if they were, how do we rework the process to make sure that they aren't going forward?
Yeah. As a customer of tax professionals, both personal and business, one of the things that I found most successful with the tax firms that I've worked with and the bookkeeping firms I worked with was communication, right? The more that we can communicate with me as the client, the better that the relationship will be, the better that the outcome for both of us will be. You guys having a smooth, efficient project or client service, and for me, obviously, very smooth and efficient output. Tell me a little bit about how communication plays and how it's something that you guys think about, you train your team on, and how you think about kind of communication as a strategy when it comes to your clients.
Yeah, I can jump in here, Dave. And what I would say is one of the things we did differently about a year and a half ago was a quarterly newsletter. And that quarterly newsletter ends up coming out a little bit more frequently. It's not monthly, but it's a little bit more than quarterly at this point. And what we've realized is our clients have one direct point of contact. So they know that person. That person sends them emails quite frequently, asking them different questions. And I think sometimes for clients, it's like, I don't want to deal with tax today. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to think about it. I'm just going to put it aside. Maybe I'll come back to it. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. We follow up with another email. Whereas these newsletters or some of our LinkedIn posts actually really drive home the point, because we do focus on key dates. These are the key dates you need to think about. So now you have this newsletter that's, filled with graphics, easy to read, not just a bullet pointed email. And so what we found is a lot of our clients appreciate that level of communication, because they are going to read through that very quickly and say, and the first thing we focus on is these are the key dates to be thinking about. And then they get the rest of the information that they want out of the newsletter. But it's different than just a bullet pointed email, and it's gone a long way for us. And we feel like we've had better customer response time as a result of it.
Yeah, I like that. I like what you said about LinkedIn too, because I find sometimes I don't read my emails, but I am scrolling on LinkedIn all the time. And so meeting me as the client where I'm at, even if I'm not a client, meeting me where I'm at to remind me of those things, I think is a great benefit for communication. What about you, Larry? Any thoughts there? Anything we can learn from your approach?
On communication, I think making the client feel comfortable and feel taken care of is really where we're, that's the end goal. Removing surprises is the end goal, and so a lot of times it's making sure that we're talking to them regularly, right? Whether it's the accounting team who's talking to them once a month, or whether it's the tax team who may talk to them once a quarter. Those types of things are what it's at, rather than being deadline driven just on the compliance. And also making sure that people know that, okay, like, so for example, we have April 15th coming up, and there's going to be a payment due for quite a few people. Don't let them know what that payment is on April 14th or April 13th, or worse, even on the 15th, right? Try to let them know there's a payment coming now, if you know there's a payment coming, and maybe a degree of magnitude for what that payment might be, even if you don't have it perfect yet, just so that as you get there, there's not this horrible negative surprise where they thought they owed nothing and you tell them they owe a lot or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. In our prep sessions, there was a pretty big consensus that a focus for all of your firms was ensuring long-term relationships, right? You've put a lot into acquiring new customers, new clients. You want to make sure that you have a long-term relationship with your clients. What initiatives or strategies can we learn from that you're deploying to ensure client retention and satisfaction, both throughout tax season, but of course throughout the year? And Matthew, why don't you kick us off here if you have a point of view?
So as I said, we're the accounting team for almost all of the returns we do, whether it's business or personal. And so our aim is we talk to clients on a monthly basis, and we usually sit down and we'll go through their books with them and go through their financials. And we really want to try, instead of wearing an accountant hat, we want to try and wear an advisor hat, right? Talking to them about what KPIs we see in the financials. And then on top of that, if we do the taxes, which we usually do, so some kind of either usually quarterly, some kind of discussion on taxes, right? Whether it's any new developments, which that's been a lot recently, right? Or where they're trending compared to where they were last year, which is then going to drive ultimately the tax liability at the end of the year. Or if there's different tax strategies that we think they've grown into that we think that we can deploy. So it's really that regular touch point, and then it's being proactive, right? So not waiting until they reach out to you to say, hey, what's going on with my taxes this year? Making sure that you're the first in that line and talking to them first. And we also have a rule where we don't always hit it, but we try to get back to all emails within 24 hours, right? It's kind of like a golden rule of our firm. And it seems easy and it seems low hanging, but with how busy all CPA firms are, it's not. And so that makes a big difference that we like to hang our hat on.
Yeah, no, I really like that, because even if you don't have the perfect answer right away, the fact that you've acknowledged my answer, except, yep, we're on it, we'll come back to you, goes a long way for building a strong relationship with your clients. So I like that. John, what about you?
Yeah, I think the way I think about this is I used to have a gentleman that I reported into a few years back. He would always ask this question of, well, who's in business development? and a lot of, the BD team, the sales team would raise their hand and they'd say me, and everybody else would not put their hand up, thinking, oh, well, I'm part of the client service department, I'm part of the whatever department. And, I think when you're in an accounting firm, I think we all realize we're all in business development. Every single one of us is in business development. And I'm drawing a blank on the show, but it's a show about investment banking with some of the students coming out of school, and I think it takes place in London. I think it's an HBO series. But one of the pieces of advice was, don't talk work for a minute. For a whole minute that you have with your client, do not talk work. Talk about their background. Talk about what's going on with their family, their dog, their this, their that, and formulate that relationship. And I think what happens with that relationship is, listen, we all make mistakes. And our firm has made mistakes. And when you make those mistakes, the team is so much more forgiving when they feel like they actually have a relationship with you. And it's not just hey, fill out this, fill out that. So we encourage our team, to the extent that they can, to really formulate a relationship. And it's not a fake relationship or anything like that. What interests you, CPA? Talk to them about that, and it could be anything. And we find that makes a huge difference in terms of customer service, customer retention, and making sure that clients want to be with us long term.
Yeah, it's all about building trust, right? And when you think about it, the product that you're selling is, yes, a tax return, but it's a relationship of trust. And every single touch point, right? Whether it's the CPA and the client, but also like the billing and the pre-conversations and the monthly newsletter and post on LinkedIn. Those are all touch points that you have with your client. That's the product. Right. Yeah. And so that's why it's very important. I like that.
And Dave, two things to, with AI, I'm sure we'll probably talk about that a little bit later, but like with AI, is that going to replace us? And the short answer for me is, if you're providing good customer service, you're never going to be replaced. I don't care what industry you're in. And then the second is, to your point, when our team has those conversations with the clients, not only does it brighten up the client's day, it brightens up our employees' day. It truly does, because the employees are talking about something that they care about, something that they're passionate about. We all have families. We all have pets that we love. And if you can bring that onto the table, it just puts everything into perspective.
Yeah. So you talked about AI. Let's talk about technology, right? I think, Larry, you brought up Carbon as one technology you guys deploy. You also talked about, I think it was called SafeSend. Is that the product? Right. For collecting. Can we just go around the room? Tell us one technology that you guys are deploying. If it's AI, would love to hear how you're using AI. But one technology that you're deploying that we can all learn from, and as a takeaway, right? These are for CPA. We all want to learn. What can we learn and bring back to our firms to deploy and use, whether we have budget or maybe it's something that's very accessible? Would love to hear from that. Let's go around the room. One technology you guys are deploying in your firms that we can learn from. Larry, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things, but the easiest one right now for everyone to do is just general AI LLM models, kind of like John was saying, and not to do anything accounting specific. I mean, there are plenty of examples, and there's great podcasts out there that kind of go through some of these examples. I'd point out like Jason Statz's channel on YouTube is a great spot to start.
That's great.
But simply to help you craft emails better. Like, I'll often write an email or respond to an email, but before I send it, go put it into one of the chat models and be like, make it better, right? Either because sometimes, we can be frustrated, or we can be maybe write something too technical. Like, just make this so that like a regular person, when they receive this, is nicer. And it's not always perfect, but it's a huge improvement. And sometimes just the mental energy to write a really nice email is a lot when you're busy. And I found it's just a great help to do that.
It's great. And you're using ChatGPT or Claude or
yeah, we were kind of experimenting with all of them. We're super tech curious, but if you're not sure what to do, I would just go to ChatGPT for sure.
Yeah, it's a pretty good general LLM out there for everybody. Matthew, what about you? What technology are you guys deploying? AI or just standard software out there?
Yeah, so one of the new technologies that we started using last tax season, and we continue to use it, is Tally4, which is a it's a software that integrates between QuickBooks and your tax software, and you can do trial balance mapping. You can make your book to tax adjustments in there. You can also make a book adjustment in there. Like let's say, not to get too technical, but if the cash basis isn't really cash basis in QuickBooks, right, you can make adjustments to get it on a true cash basis, or vice versa on an accrual basis. And so it creates a pretty standard work papers that have made it. We used to kind of have each different tax preparer would have a different work paper view, or they would have different work papers, and so it would make it difficult to kind of review each return. And so this is kind of standardized the work papers, which has been great. So it's certainly not perfect, but I feel like it's saved us time, and our team likes it, which is a big win. That's the biggest thing, right? If you get the team to actually embrace it and like it, that's like huge.
Yeah, I often find, we talked about like carrots and sticks to get someone to do something. And I actually think carrots and sticks are the wrong way of looking at it. I like to think about dopamine instead, right? Which is create an experience that people naturally gravitate towards, where you never have to carrot or stick them. They just want to use the product. It sounds like you found that with Tally4, so that's great.
Yep.
And I would
John,
just point out
you?
briefly that any software like that, and Tally4 is a great one, right? That's trial balance bridge software, effectively. But change management within your firm, if you're going to implement something like this, is a really, really big deal. And it sounds like you guys were successful, but there have been many times throughout my career we tried to put in tax department automation software that have failed because we didn't do a good enough job of getting the team's buy-in, even if the software was great. So I would just warn anybody in the
from
department.
your experience from those failures.
What can we
learn? Any learnings that we can take away?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones is that you need to make sure that you include as many of those stakeholders at different levels, like from associates to senior managers and everybody in between, including directors too, if it's a multiple director firm, in the process to help them all get to yes before you decide you're going to buy that software and implement it. Because if you try to do it top down or from the middle out, is a high likelihood that some people are going to say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to keep doing it the way I was doing it. I don't want to use this software. And if they don't get enough at-bats at that software, they'll never become proficient. And then tax season's over, and then it just a wasted software spend and a bunch of time.
Yeah.
I think you really got to pick your battles too, right? Which I think is what you said, Larry. Like really make sure that it's worth it, right? Like if you're just going to implement software to implement software, like, and there's not really any value add behind it, scrap it. You got to do like a cost benefit analysis that's really got to save time, and you got to pick your battles.
Yeah, and to your point, Matthew, even pull in some of the stakeholders for that cost benefit analysis, and have certain folks that throughout the firm say this is a bad idea and here's why.
Yeah, I like
or maybe
that.
it's just a bad time, right? Maybe it's a good idea, but not this year.
Yeah.
Right, or whatever it might be.
And Larry, you hit on change management. Change management is one of the hardest things to get right at a small company or a Fortune 500 company. It is hard. It is a lot of work. It is over communication. You really got to put together a game plan for it. One of the things that we use that we used, this wasn't necessarily for change management within the company, but it was used for our clients on how to use our research and development software portal that we have. It's called Tango. It's tango.ai. And what happens is you go in there and you walk through your whole process, and Tango AI puts together this very clean, very simple to follow procedure that when we kick off to our emails, we share that with them. When we kick off an email to our clients about, hey, you got to get your research and development tax study done. We need some inputs from you. This is what you need to do. This is how to use the platform. And it completely simplifies, and it's very easy to do, and it's very affordable.
It's process documentation software.
Yeah, process documentation, software learning. It does a few different things. That's exactly right, Dave.
Do you also do that for training new hires onto your team? You have a series of tangos that you can share with a new hire or someone that's just getting ramped up at your firm? It's been so successful that we just haven't yet, and we will be. Yeah. That's really cool. All right. Tango.ai, throw it into the chat. Oh, yeah, we can all learn from it. I really like that one. While we're on tech, I mean, all of your firms, you guys do bookkeeping, you guys do tax. You're all partners of Ramp. This is not a Ramp sales call, so don't think so. But tell me a little bit about how you use Ramp. It's not directly tied to tax, but it does help your teams close the books, get clean sets of financials so you can have a much more efficient tax season. We'd love to hear your experience using Ramp and how you use it successfully inside of your firms.
Sure, I'll be happy to go. I mean, I think, we've been Ramp partners for a few years now, which is a long time for most Ramp folks. And, I love the intersection of accounting and technology, and Ramp is one of my favorite tools. The way that it helps us is just like you said, Dave. It helps us close the books faster. It helps the card holder tag their expense and add their memo and add the receipt easier. It actually kind of makes the accountant's job a bit easier if it's done right, because it's pushing that work out onto the person who is spending. Some clients don't like that, but that is what's happening. It's adding some accountability on the spend, and because of that, it's then automatically syncing into the general ledger and making it so that we can potentially close the books, maybe 3-4 days after month end instead of maybe a week or 2 weeks after month end, which then makes it faster for us to have that meeting that Matt was talking about with the client faster, which then makes it so the tax team and the tax analysis can happen faster and all with more accurate books. I think someone in the chat had said it all comes down to a clean set of books. That's right. If you have clean books, then all of a sudden the tax team can do actual tax work. When you have tax people trying to fix accounting work, you end up getting journal entries to accounts receivable and accounts payable, which is not something you're allowed to do.
Totally. I just want to add, if you can close your books in 3 to 4 days, you can make decisions in your business much faster. If you don't have closed books until the 15th of the month, it's much harder to change behavior because 15 days out of that month already happened, right?
You can also maybe even rely on the books intra-month.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for a close. You don't have to wait for the statement. Those books are substantially accurate all the time.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. Continuous close is what they call it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. John, what about for you and your firm?
So what I would say, it's kind of twofold, but one, I come from, working for the Big Four and then also a Fortune 500 company. And I think both places at one point we used a software. I'm not going to get into it, but we used a software, and it was, I'm telling you, you would take receipts. I don't care what dollar value the receipts were. You would have to photocopy them, create a copy, send it in to somebody, hope to get paid for it. And you would just go, it was just so mundane. And you'd be like, this seems like it's backwards. And then we would have business development folks come in for whatever the business was. And they'd be like, I used to work at this startup and it was this simple. Why is it so complicated at a company that can actually afford really good software and go do something with it? And I couldn't believe it when I came to Account Talent about 2 years ago. We've been on Ramp that entire time. And I honestly couldn't get over how easy it was. And just taking a picture of your receipt, you get a text right away. It's done. It's all taken care of. And then also, given the fact that we're accounting firms and we may travel on behalf of the client, we may be billing that to the client depending on the structure of the business. Ramp makes it so easy for the business to go do that. And anything that you can do to save time. That's what it all comes down to. And Larry talked about the intersection of technology, and it's so true. This is something that should have been rolled out 20 years ago, and I'm just so happy that it exists today.
And the more time that you save, the more efficient your practice is, the higher your margins are, the happier your customers are. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. A quick question from the chat that Michelle has, which is, what accounting softwares do your firms support? I'm going to guess a lot of QuickBooks out there, but go around the room quickly. What do your clients use? What accounting softwares, GLs, do you support?
Yeah, so we're mainly on QBO, which we've done a huge migration to get a lot of our clients off of desktop and onto QBO. But we also have some clients on Xero, and then we have some clients on Uninet, which is kind of a specific accounting software to government contractors.
Gotcha. John?
Yeah, so our firm is focused purely on startups. So a lot of our clients, they don't need to transition to a large ERP system. They need something simple. So QBO is typically the right avenue for them. But because they're startup founders, they are very in tune to some of the new software out there, and they want to use that software. So we actually use Rillet is excellent for deferred revenue. It's just a great platform. Puzzle is an excellent platform also for startups. They have a lot of startup friendly metrics. A lot of these startup founders in the beginning, they're not as in tune to profitability. They're in tune to growth and growth of clients, and their metrics are a little bit different than a landscaping company, right? Their metrics are completely different. So Puzzle has built, this dashboard on top of that has that level of information. Other software out there, Quanta is brand new. I think they just started. They just rolled out. They're excellent to work with. And then we also support Xero as well, in addition to QuickBooks.
Beautiful accounting software. Larry, what about it for your firm?
Yeah, so just like everybody else, we also support QuickBooks Online, but we're also Sage Intacct accounting partners, and so we support a mid-market platform. And that's also one of our favorite parts about Ramp. Ramp's one of the few softwares that will support all of the dimensions that are integrating into Intacct, and a real big value out there.
Yeah, and I think we integrate with all of the softwares you guys just mentioned, so that's awesome. We can support all of your clients. All right. I have a few more questions, and then we'll move to Q&A. If anybody in the chat has questions for the panelists here, we will get to them in just a few minutes.
Dave, I do have one other thing I think it would be really great to mention for all the tax listeners out here, which is if you're not pulling tax transcripts from the IRS, you should really think about doing it. So
tell me more. What is that? What's a tax transcript from the IRS? I didn't know that was a thing. What is that?
Yeah, so you can get power of attorney or other ways to be able to have access to your client's information, and you can pull what the IRS has on file for them. And so you can see what the current account balances is, whether they filed or not, these kinds of things. But also for an individual return, you can get what's called a wage and income transcript and get after, sometime over the summer. They won't be available yet, but you'll be able to get what W-2s were filed, what 1099s were filed, what everything was filed, all these matching documents. And then you can check the return to make sure that client didn't forget to give you something, which then reduces notices and reduces all these things. It makes the entire experience for the client better. We've been doing this for 2 years now, pulling transcripts for every single individual tax return that we do. And, 20-30% of the time we find that someone forgot to give us a matching document. And by doing this, we've totally avoided an entire notice cycle.
As an individual, can I pull my own transcript?
Yes, you can. You can create an account at the IRS and do that yourself.
Okay, and all of this is online, irs.com?
irs.gov, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Don't go to irs.gov.com. That is probably not a good website to go to.
And as professionals, there's software out there that we can subscribe to and load up all of our power of attorney, so it makes it easy to refresh them and pull the newest transcripts. Or you can just log in and pull a transcript one at a time for free with what's called your e-services account. As a tax
I'm sending a note to my tax preparer right now that I want to do that over the summer. That's great.
I mean, we talked about customer retention earlier. I mean, that's a customer for life. Right, you gave all your documents to the CPA firm. Everything that you had, it's April 2nd. Everything that came through the mail, you handed over to your tax CPA, and then they filed. Great, thank you, appreciate it. Cut them a check, and then in July they go, "Hey, you didn't give us this W-2," and you're like, "Well, why didn't I? Oh, I must not have gotten it. Let me call the company. Oh, how did you figure that out?" And I think that alone right there, that's customer for life, because at that point you feel like your CPA has your back regardless, no matter what time of year it is, no matter what's going on, no matter who owes who what, they're always going to be looking out for me. So I think that's a great step and not something I was familiar with.
And Larry, do you do an amended return then over the summer if there's something that got
in this case? That's a good question, but no, in this case, what you would do is you had filed an extension. Most of our clients have something complicated going on, so very few people file on time.
Yeah.
So we file an extension, so we still have time to add in whatever we might be missing over the summer. Yeah.
I love that. All right, that's great. That's really great tidbit to take away. Thank you. All right, let me ask you guys a few questions, which is, you guys are all experienced tax professionals. You're all firm leaders, right? Tax season is taxing, for lack of a better word. What gets you excited for the work that you do? What keeps you motivated in these long, intense weeks? And how do you motivate your team when things get really long and difficult out there? Larry, let's start with you. How do you stay motivated?
I really love helping people. And when clients are appreciative, and they're not always, but when clients are appreciative, when you have that relationship that John had talked about, it's very rewarding to do the work for them. And so I think that's probably my favorite thing to do is, is to feel appreciated, and so that everybody else there and everyone on the team feels like, hey, we made a difference to help these people do whatever it is that we're going to do. Yeah. How to keep the team motivated? I think that's always a challenge, but at some firms it's pizza parties and things like that. At my firm, what it is it's a flexible work environment. Most of our team is remote, and that's the way that it kind of works for us.
I like that. What about Matthew? What about you at Bay?
Yeah. I love helping our team, right? And I think this goes hand in hand with keeping the team motivated, is that giving people new opportunities to work on things that they wouldn't have gotten exposure to is the exciting part of my job. So if it's somebody who's an accountant who's never done a tax return before and given the opportunity to do a couple business returns and a couple 1040s, and seeing that light come on, that they're like, oh, that's why we do the accounting like this all year, is so that it makes it easier when we do the tax return, right? Or understanding how we can save our clients money and add value is a lot of fun for me. And I think that's also some of the ways that we can mitigate, burnout and keep our team motivated, is by continually giving our team members new opportunities, right? If it's, as I talked about earlier, if it's that seasoned tax professional, having them do less data input, right? And do more like pure tax analysis, which is what they probably love to do, right? And then vice versa, having an accountant step into the process that doesn't have any tax experience, that maybe wants to become a CPA down the line, and giving them that exposure is a good way to keep the team motivated, to making sure that we're continually kind of evolving as a firm so that people are able to work on what they want to work on. And I think it's important to set expectations, right? Like if you work at an accounting firm and that does taxes, January 1st to April 15th, or even more though, it's going to be tough, right? And making sure that the expectations are set and that people understand that, but then making sure that people are able to do the work that they like and that excites them, or it's new or interesting work.
Yeah, totally. And John, what about you? How do you stay motivated?
I would just jump in. I just want to jump in on one thing Matthew said. Setting expectations is key. I can't tell you how many times, and before tax, I was in more of a financial reporting role, and you'd have the quarter closes and how difficult that could be for a publicly traded company. And you just set expectations that these are the things that I need to do. I'm not going to make plans with family, friends, whoever it might be. I'm not going to go out and do these things that I usually otherwise would do. And then, hey, if you're able to finish the work, you get this free night and you're actually excited about it versus being upset that you missed out on something. So setting expectations key. The second thing is just having fun. As CPAs, as accountants, we're typically, we're typically not always the most social person in the room. We're not always the extrovert. But I think what I've learned is you can never, ever jeopardize on integrity, never jeopardize on ethics. I mean, all of those are so critically important to our role. You never waver on any of that. But at the same time, it doesn't mean you have to be super serious the whole time. You can joke around, you can have fun, you can, make light of things. Send over a meme. I mean, there's so many memes and GIFs around here that we're sending these things all the time. And, hopefully most of them are politically correct. Some of them probably not. But generally speaking, it gets everybody into a good mood. And I'll never forget my first time working at a Big Four, like how serious everybody was. I'm like, this is brutal. This is not somewhere I want to work long term. And that culture has certainly changed a little bit over time. That has absolutely changed in those Big Four and those other accounting firms. But for us, our big thing with our team is just have fun. Have fun. Yeah. We're all going to make mistakes sometimes. We got to own up to those mistakes. We got to fix them. We got to move out. We got to fix it so we don't make those mistakes again. But we got to have fun while we're doing it. So that's the approach we take.
I never worked in a tax firm, but I did work in corporate accounting. And we would have once a quarter, we would have the monthly journal entry awards called the Journeys. We would all pick our favorite journal entry from the last quarter, and we would give it an award. Corny, but it kept things fun.
Yeah, what would define a favorite journal entry?
It's just probably massive. Something that took a whole day to prepare, I bet.
Exactly. All right. We talked a lot about client retention. We talked about combating staff burnout. We talked about deploying technology, especially when collecting documents, materials for your clients. Looking ahead, what is one thing that you're doing differently this year that you haven't done in years past? And hopefully something that if works well, the strategy works well, you'll continue to do it going forward. Anything new that you're doing this year?
I've talked about this a lot. We brought in a lot of people who had no tax experience and are having them play a big role in the tax process. And so that's been a huge change, that some people have crashed and burned, but others have thrived in kind of that role because they wanted to gain that exposure. And so it's been an investment on the whole tax side of the firm, right? Like we talked about this a lot kind of late last year of like, hey, we want to bring more people underneath the tax umbrella that want to get that tax experience and don't necessarily have it. The first year is going to be an investment of everybody's time, right? Because we're going to have to do a lot of training, a lot of hand holding to make sure that people understand what they're doing. But then moving forward, if we have, a program that can allow people to gain tax exposure in our firm, and then also it can, double the amount of people that are dangerous with the tax return in their hands moving forward, it's going to make everybody's lives easier moving forward. And so, there's been some people that have struggled, and there's been some, tax managers that have gotten frustrated with the process, but a majority of people have said, this has been great. We spent more time this year, but we're looking forward to our investment paying dividends down the road. So that's something that we're going to continue.
That's an interesting staffing strategy. Larry, what about you? Anything new you're doing this year?
First of all, in the chat, someone else is going to bring through your journal entry award idea.
I love it. Vincent, I love it. Post it on LinkedIn when you do it and tag me. I love that. Okay.
I think that, this is the first year we're using AI in tax research, which doesn't really go directly to the tax compliance season, but it's going to be a big deal. It's not really a big deal yet because like our research tools themselves are only just starting to tiptoe into AI. We use the CCH research project or CCH research product Answer Connect, which is getting into it, and it looks promising. But even like some of the general purpose tools are doing some very cool stuff, whether it's Perplexity, Deep Research, or whatever, any of the other tools. I think one of the risks is that we're going to have people who think that they can do tax research now with these AI tools and we'll realize they'll get the wrong answer. So it warning for everybody out there, but it does make a lot of our work easier if you know how to spot the wrong answers. And so I'm really looking forward to that, and it'll help our consulting practice and our tax planning practice work a lot better.
I've been doing that as well, loading up a pretty long, 100-page PDF, and then having a conversation and asking the PDF questions to pull out and say, okay, great. Now, where is that in the document? Because I'll go reread that section to confirm. But at least it's saving me hours of reading the entire document or trying to scan through really quick to get that answer.
Like load a trust document, load a partnership agreement, quickly find those sections. Then, like you said, Dave, go validate to make sure it's correct. But absolutely.
Yeah. And John, what about you? Anything new you're doing this year that hopefully will be durable in years to come?
Yeah, I don't have something for this year specifically. Something that we wanted to roll out that we are in the process of building is for our first level review of the tax returns. We do want to build in a bot/AI that really is just looking for a few key things, certain things that need a match on a tax return, certain things that need to be pulled perfectly. And as opposed to having a human go do those 3 or 4, 6, 8 things, we want to train a bot to do that. Our goal was to do that before the beginning of the season. We didn't, but we're in the process of training that today. So we'll be ready next year.
I like that. All right. Well, let's move to some Q&A. We have about 10 minutes left, so I'd love to take some Q&A from the chat. If you have anything, please add it. I see some here that are already. So Sarah asks, Matthew, how did you onboard these new employees, the employees you were just talking about, quickly, but still get them prepared? Any tips that Sarah and everybody else can learn from?
Yeah, so I don't know if most firms do this, and we went through and we graded each one of our returns that we do, either A, B, or C, A being the hardest, C being the easiest. And then for those B and C returns, we basically said we're going to have all new preparers do these returns. And then I meet with them twice a week, where everybody that's in this program meets with me, and there's a couple other tax professionals, and we go through everybody's questions where they're stuck on their returns. So that way, not only are they getting answers, but everybody else in the group can see kind of where other people are getting stuck. So everybody can see where we are. And then we went through and made some pretty detailed SOPs on how to use all the technology in the tax process, and how to if you get stuck, to kind of go back to those SOPs. We call it a roadmap, right? And how to do it. And so clearly the roadmap's not going to get you everything, or not going to have answer every question, but it's at least good enough where people who didn't have any tax experience were able to pick it up and use it. And we really think of it as data input, right? Not as preparing a tax return or tax analysis, but how do we get the data from QuickBooks into the tax software and make those adjustments that we want to make to the books. So that's been meeting with them twice a week, and then being very prepared and writing out SOPs were I think the two key things. That's
maybe you can use the Tango AI for some of those SOPs in the future. I love that. All right. We talked a little bit about continuous close. John, were you talking about talking about continuous close? This new idea that you're seeing from accounting software, especially Puzzle, where if you are using Ramp, where if you have the data flowing from your subledger or subledgers into your accounting system, you can pretty much be closed in real time. You don't have to wait until that end of the month. So can you guys touch upon how this concept of the continuous close can allow tax teams to elevate their relationships with clients and sell more advisory services?
Yeah, I think Larry did hit on this, but I'm going to jump in just real quick. And I would just say in my role and my past roles that I've had, I can't tell you how frequently I've sat in the office of a president or a CEO of the division and just, what do you mean we can't get that for 15 days? I need to know today. I need to make that decision today. And here you are, you're sitting on $100 million worth of inventory that needs to be reconciled, and you're unsure of exactly what we have, what we don't. And there's just a lot that goes into it. And as an accountant, you just get so bogged down in, well, it just needs to happen. This is what needs to happen. And the idea that all of a sudden you can go to that president and say, hey, day one, this is what it looks like. Nominally speaking, 99% correct. This is what it looks like. Whatever decision you need to make, you have the data. Or better yet, we as finance professionals, as opposed to reading the news, we go make the news. Mr. President, this is what you can actually go do with this data. This is what we would recommend based on what we're seeing month over month. Here you go. And so I think that's how you add a ton of value to your clients.
Yeah, sometimes 95% correct on day one is much more valuable than 100% correct on day 15. I couldn't agree with you more, especially when it comes to making decisions. You got good enough data.
They're the president. They're the president of the company. They're not GAAP. They're not FASB, right? They don't care. You go get the GAAP stuff correct over time. We don't care. You just give me the data that I need to go make the decision for the business.
Cool. I love it. All right. We got time for one more question before we wrap up. How and when do you, let me read this question a little bit better. All right. How do you measure a smooth tax season, right? At the end of the day, you want to make sure you have a smooth tax season for your team. Are there any specific KPIs or metrics that you guys use to evaluate the efficiency of your team and also the customer satisfaction of all your clients? Larry, I guess anybody.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at how long returns are sitting. It's different than like the month end close where you're like, hey, we want to close within so many days after month end, right? And then have that meeting with the client. But with taxes, you just want to make sure you're just moving things out and working down your list as efficiently as you can while maintaining quality. So I think, in our firm, we have a couple different metrics. One's a quality score, which is qualitative, a feedback score for every preparer and every manager. It's a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or we call it a thumbs sideways, that emoji, right? And then the other one is, how quickly are we getting these things out? How many returns did we get out this week? That kind of thing.
Interesting.
We don't have anything too scientific. I mean, we have all of our employees take a feedback survey. I think it's once a month. And so we kind of compare the NPS score, like the score that spits out of that feedback survey, to what it was the year before and what it was outside of tax season, right? So that we can kind of gauge how sour people are, and so that's one, kind of data point that is good, because obviously you can get a general feel with talking to people how they're doing, but for the people that you aren't able to catch up with, how are they feeling? So that's one point for our people that we can measure. We measure.
And you do that for your employees. Do you do that for your clients as well, in NPS?
it's more binary for our clients. Twice a year, we'll reach out to them and say, would you recommend us to your peers? And they can either say yes or no.
Yeah, keep it
sense.
simple. That's great.
Cool.
Yeah, we don't have anything very scientific. It's a great question, and it's something that we should be thinking about. But we're happy when we hit the deadlines. We're happy that we start early so that we have plenty of space to make sure we hit those deadlines, and we count that as a success. But it might not be a success for every one of our employees. So I think we need to dig into that a little deeper.
Totally. All right. Well, listen, we are at the top of the hour. So I want to thank the three of you guys for this lively discussion. I want to thank everybody who listened in live for creating a lively chat. Thank you for coming in live. And I want to thank everybody that's listening in on the podcast, hopefully weeks or months from now when we tape this. Thank you for joining us. So big thank you to John, Larry, Matthew for sharing your insights and guidance with us. Always a pleasure to learn from you guys, from your experience and what you're seeing out in the market. Just a reminder before we wrap up, Earmark will send out the recording of today's session probably in the next few days. So keep an eye in your inbox from Earmark. Make sure to follow John, Larry, and Matthew on LinkedIn to see the latest on what their companies are doing and how their firms are doing on LinkedIn. And to learn more about Ramp's offering for accounting firms and our partnership program, check out ramp.com/earmark. We have a landing page there for you. So thanks again, everybody, for joining, and have a great day.
Today's event has ended. To earn CPE, go to earmark.app or scan the QR code on the screen. Then log in or create your free account. Search for the course by tapping on the magnifying glass icon on the home screen and then entering the name of this event. It takes a few days to make the course, so if you're attending this event live, keep an eye out for an email letting you know when the course is available. Pass the quiz to earn your CPE, then tap the button to email yourself a certificate. Stay tuned for more events from Earmark. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.